Come be a part of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics with your host, Dr. Ed Holliday. Hear the voices of liberty speaking all across America. Doc Holliday provides thought-provoking interviews and commentary about the issues and actions that are afflicting this country and what we need to do to get America back on track. Get fired up, get inspired, get on board with Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics right now.
And here we go.
And once again, that's the sound of rock cracking. You've got Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics right here on a cold week. And how was your week last week? It was cold across the South, and we've had freezing temperatures and snow and ice like we haven't seen in many years. So it's been a little bit of trouble traveling, and I know a lot of people have hunkered down, but it's not too late to listen to some hot rock splitting politics. And when we talk about rock splitting politics, sometimes we forget about the basis, but everything, the honor in America. 10 years ago, there was a Restoring Honor rally Glenn Beck held at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial. And I remember I was there with Dr. Alveda King, a friend of our show and a friend of mine, and we've written a book together that we talk about, and I'll mention later in the show. But I just remember that Restoring Honor rally that Glenn Beck had. And where is the honor? What's happened? And even then, there's a sense in America we needed some honor. We needed to restore honor in America. And Dr. Grant McKracken, we're bringing in the Kraken, all right? Dr. Grant McKracken's got a new book called The New Honor Code, and we're glad to have him here on the show. Dr. Grant McKracken is a cultural anthropologist. He holds a Ph.D. from the University of Chicago, and he's taught at Harvard, at the University of Cambridge, and MIT. He advises a wide variety of companies and individuals, including Google, Netflix, Nike, the Ford Foundation, the Boston Book Festival, and even Kanye West. He lives in Connecticut with his wife and 3 cats, and we're glad to have him on today's show because we're going to talk about honor and the new honor code. So let's get him on the line right now. This week on Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics, we have the author of a book called The New Honor Code. It's Dr. Grant McKracken. And Grant, welcome to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics.
Doc, it's my honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, you say you are a cultural anthropologist. And
that's right.
That's a one big word in cultural, and everybody. So what does that mean, Grant?
I guess anthropology is traditionally anthropology is the field of study where people look at cultures other than the U.S., other than Western cultures. So anthropologists have gone off to the Pacific and to Africa and to the Middle East. In the last few years, we've seen anthropologists say, well, hey, if we can study other cultures, we should be able to study American culture. So that's what I've been doing for 30 years.
For 30 years.
Yeah.
And we have, in those 30 years, is amazing to me to think of where we were in the 80s, 90s, and where we are now. And thinking back before Facebook, some people, like our young people, have lived with cell phones all their lives. And, of course, we can remember when there's no cell phones. And yet social platforms and we're seeing this right now. We're in this council culture. If you don't agree with me, we're shutting you down. So how does honor tie in to where we are now?
I think it might. I mean, I wrote the book in the hopes of making the case, and it's for you and for readers to decide whether I made the case. But my sense is that as I looked around me, as I looked at American culture, I could see evidence of moral confusion. And, I looked at guys like the gymnastics coach Nassar, Jeffrey Epstein, a variety of people who, the woman who kind of tried to get her kids into college by bribing various coaches. It just everywhere you looked, you saw evidence of people who weren't just acting badly; they were acting as if they were entitled to act badly. Right? That even the embarrassment of acting badly, of giving over to temptation, that was evaporating, and people were now just acting badly without a second thought or so much as a tremor of self reproach. So anyhow, that was the idea. Was, geez, is there some way of rebuilding the moral compass without actually asking people to undergo a complete moral reformation and a change in their religion, change in their politics, a change in all of the details of their life? I wasn't trying to build a cult here. I was just trying to say, look, there's a simple code, the honor code, that we can all use, whatever our political affiliations, and that can help keep us keep us pointed to the true north of good behavior, and discourage us from behaving badly.
When you say the simple honor code, and does that mean something different in 2020 or 2021 than it did in, say, 1950?
Yeah, I think it does. I sort of borrowed the idea from the 16th century, so like 400, 500 years ago. So that's really my point of contrast in the book. And I looked at what honor meant to Elizabethans, and we don't want to go back to that honor code. It was viciously hierarchical. It was certain people could never have honor. Other people could have honor however badly they behaved. Parts of that code. If people have been watching Bridgerton, they catch a glimpse of the honor code in another time a couple hundred years ago. So I didn't want to go back to the old-fashioned notion of honor. I was trying to kind of retrofit it a little bit for the present day. And yeah.
Well, and it goes back, when you say honor code, then you also think about what came in the recent, hit, Hamilton, the play Hamilton. And when you go back to Alexander Hamilton and the duels, and as that part of the old honor code that, was too vicious.
Yeah, too vicious and too kind of edgy, right? You had guys who would throw down, would slap one another with gloves and demand a duel because one of them looked at the other one the wrong way, right? That's not the kind of honor that I think, we want to revive. That kind of honor. It made us too edgy, too trigger happy, if you want. We want something that makes people larger and more dignified, not anxious about their standing.
So is there an era that you see that where honor was the honor that was good for the whole culture, good for society? Is there a certain time and honor that you want to reflect back to? Are your books titled The New Honor Code? Are you saying we need to push to a higher standard than we've seen before?
Yeah, I'd like to. We're very good as a culture. We're incredibly inventive. We're capable of changing ourselves as we go. And sort of part of the problem, I guess, that you were referring to in the opening, right? We've got certain practices, new cultural practices that are, in my opinion, a bit nutty and dangerous. And so we're now capable of making changes that we couldn't even dream of making before. And sometimes we choose wisely and sometimes we choose badly. So, yes, I think we could take this notion of honor and strip it down and kind of rebuild it, re-engineer it, if you want, so that it maximized the possibilities that we would do the right thing, that we would rise to the occasion, that we would honor people's expectations of us, that we would do something good for our families and our communities. That's my hope, is that we can do a rebuild here that makes our honor actually better and more dignifying, if you want, than previous honor codes were.
Well, one of the things I see in the business field, and what they always said, a handshake was my word, and you didn't need a 200-page contract. You just, a handshake was a word, and things they would seem simple, but you had to honor that word. You had to do what you said you're going to do, or you don't have a reputation in the business world. So it's that something we need to get back to, or do you see that we've gotten away from it?
Yeah. No, I'd love to see us get back to that notion of reputation. That's kind of one of the things. I was thinking about Lance Armstrong, the guy who was the very talented cyclist.
Right, and he ran in France.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So he was discovered to have engaged in practices that meant that he was winning big events and Olympic medals because he was cheating, and the cheating meant that he was effectively stealing medals from people who came in like fourth. Right? They weren't going to show in the medals because that Lance Armstrong and other people were cheating in their approach to the sport. So the idea here is, could we create, I guess this honor code is meant to do two things. It's meant to speak to our better angels, right? It's meant to inspire us to do the right thing, but it's also meant to fire a shot across the bow for people who can't bring themselves to do the right thing. So it says on the one hand, look, here's your responsibility. Here's what you owe your family. Here's what you owe your community. Step up. Rise to this occasion. But if you can't bring yourself to rise to the occasion, suffer. You should know that bad behavior will cost you. That bad behavior will destroy your reputation. And a man without reputation, a person without reputation, as they used to say, is a very poor man indeed, right? Because he or she have lost that essential thing that gives you a place in your community, that gives you esteem in your community, that gives you the ability to do business on a handshake, right? People know you, they trust you. And so a guy like Lance Armstrong, I think, is now counting on that American generosity that says, hey, people make mistakes, and Americans say that we're a land of second chances. You can come back. You can. We'll let you back into the community. And I think that's maybe one thing that this honor code says is, you have honor. We hope, live with honor and decency. But if you destroy that honor by cheating, for instance, in your sport, you're kind of done. You can't come back in. You're out. And I think that's the thing I'm hoping for here, is that shadow of a doubt, is when somebody's on the verge of bad behavior, we want them to do the right thing for positive reasons, but if they can't do that, we want them to think, oh my God, what happens if I get caught? What happens if people take my reputation away from me? What if I'm scorned by the community I belong to? Am I prepared to pay that cost? So that's what I'm hoping for, is do the right thing for good reasons, but if you can't do it for good reasons, do it for those reasons. Fear of discovery, fear of punishment, fear of loss of reputation.
And you're talking about cheating in like a sport, or cheating in business, or stealing money, and you get a second chance. But correlate that to what we find ourselves in this cancel culture now, where somebody wrote something on Facebook when they're 16 years old, discover it 10 years down the road, and they get fired. They get fired from their position, and they get scorned on Facebook, or they get their Twitter account banned forever, just for something they wrote when they were a teenager. So how do you compare that to honor? I know that's bringing in a different aspect of it, but how do you see that in the new honor code? Yeah,
I think we want to be careful about the issues for which we give people honor and the issues for which we take honor away. My feeling is that cancel culture has created this kind of hysteria that says if you use the wrong word or the wrong sentiment, and you do so, as you've just pointed out, when you're a kid and you don't really know much, you don't know better, that's not the reason to punch someone's ticket, right? That's not the reason to take honor away from them. There are much deeper, more serious kinds of issues that we want people to be honorable about than failures, occasional and distant failures of language and sentiment. especially when it's clear that this person does not stand for these things routinely, right? This was a single lapse, and there's nothing in somebody's experience that suggests that this defines them as a person. This is a kind of witch hunting, I think, and I think it's part of a kind of this ferocious, what do you call it? Kind of this almost fiendish kind of wish to discover that somebody said or done something wrong. That can't be the world in which we live. That is a kind of, that begins to look like a fascism, I think, eventually, and it discourages free speech at the very time that we are, as a nation, wrestling with issues of change, right? And we're trying to root racism out, and I don't think you do that by making people fear the possibility that if they say the tiniest wrong thing, they are now sort of canceled. They are now canceled. I think what we want to do is create an envelope of possibility where people struggle to find the language and the language they want with which to express these new and sometimes difficult concepts. We can't. I wrote a piece recently after I wrote the book. I wrote a piece on what's happening in the American corporation, where you have these training sessions. I think they're called anti-racism training sessions, and apparently they begin with people having to admit that they are racist. And I thought, wow, this is just totally nuts. In fact, right. The name of the essay is "Why You Must Never Say You Are a Racist Unless You Are a Racist." That this notion is just a kind of something deeply wrong about, and I think counterproductive, more to the point, about this approach to grappling with an important issue that we need to take seriously. This is not the way to take it seriously.
And Grant, what you just brought out, and that's something that I've dealt with for years, and I'm part of some groups that work for reconciliation, racial reconciliation. I live in Mississippi, and they've got a group called Mission Mississippi. That's the premier racial reconciliation group in Mississippi, and you want people to be able to speak their heart and see what the real heart is, and yet if you gonna hit them over a 2x4, then they're not going to speak up. And
exactly.
And so that what you brought out, I think, is very important, that we have a society that people can find a safe place where they can express themselves, find new relationships. If somebody that's opposite color or skin they are, so we got to have that. If we can't have that conversation, I think that's when Eric Holder, Attorney General under President Obama, said, we need to have this national conversation about race, and if you fear saying anything, it's hard to have that. But when you talk about the honor, I really believe your book really helps people realize where is the honor, where is that foundation we stand on, so that we can have those truthful conversations and not be in cancel culture. So I guess that's where reading your book helped me understand you got to have that foundation of honor so that you can have these strong talks of freedom of speech. Let me take this time to remind everybody you're listening to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. We're talking with Dr. Grant McKracken. He's got a new book called The New Honor Code, and we're getting a fascinating conversation. And in just a minute, I want to ask him more about cultural anthropologist and what he has seen from being that. But I also want to remind you that you're listening to us right here on Web Talk Radio. That's webtalkradio.net. And this is Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. I'm the host, Dr. Ed Holliday. And we do have a book that I wrote along with Dr. Alveda King and Dr. Alex McFarland. If you don't have that book, it is called Bedrock Truths. And you can order that book by going to www.docholliday.org. That's Holiday of 2 L's. And I just want to remind everybody that in this new year, 2021, there's a lot of rock-splitting politics going on. And we know, yes, that will continue all this year. And maybe it won't be as much as it was last year. We don't know. But what I do know is this. We're going to keep up with it. That's one reason we got Dr. Grant McKracken here, because as he's talking about honor, the new honor code in America, and how much we need honor, I think that is the foundation on which we need to start. So now, Dr. Grant, I just want to ask you, what do you see as a cultural anthropologist?
Yeah, exactly. So as an anthropologist, I do interviews all over the U.S., and I've been doing so for years, and so I know lots of Americans in lots of parts of America. And when I hear people in politics say, well, they're all racist, I think about those people with whom I've talked and the people I kind of know. And I think, this is deeply offensive. That attribution to people who are honorable and have defined themselves and conducted themselves in an honorable way, to be casually dismissed as a racist that's about as vicious a thing as you can say about somebody. I mean, and it really does not advance the cause of a conversation, an open feeling, revealing conversation about our political differences, or any of our differences for that matter, when you just casually dismiss people with this vicious language. It really goes to this heart of, there's an honor, forget my book, there's a sense of honor out there in America. There are people who live their lives honorably, and they deserve to be honored for that honorable behavior. And when you call them racist, without evidence, without any thought or concern for the facts of the matter, you really attack that honor. And I think that's a terrible thing to do. And anyhow, sorry to get on my high horse
but I'm glad you did, and it helps people see. And we've talked about cultural Marxism on this program, and we talked about, there's a group that wants to say, well, everybody's got to claim they're racist for whatever reason, then go back. But that starts the whole program on the wrong foot, because, like you said, if people have lived with honor and they got a track record, then they should be able to speak out and explore these things that we can all learn, and that's a society that's healthy and growing. And so the new honor code, what I want to get to, I know running out of time here, but I wanted to see, what do you think when you say the new honor code? Tell me where you see new. Where do we need to get this new honor code? Right.
I guess that's this idea of re-engineering the notion of honor, right? We don't want to use the old-fashioned kind. We want to use a notion of honor that says, listen, here are it's kind of a Christ and Caesar kind of operation. What do I owe to the Caesar of honor? What are the things I need to do to satisfy what I owe to my kids, my spouse, my extended family, my community? What do I owe them? And in what cases do I behave in a way that violates their right to expect of me that I will be the person I have promised to be? I'll be a good spouse. I'll be a good dad. I'll be, in my case, right, a good spouse, a good dad, a good member of the community. And when I'm tempted by bad behavior, I think we want, as I was saying a moment ago, we want people to rise to the occasion and do the right thing for the right reason, because It is the course of honor, because it dignifies us and it dignifies our families and our communities and our country. But if that doesn't work, we want a code of honor that says, listen, you misbehave yourself in this fundamental way, and we will withdraw the respect that we have for you. We will, in some sense, prevent you from being a member in full standing of this family, of this community. So, do the right thing for the right reason. If you can't do that, expect to suffer the consequences for bad behavior. And in bad behavior here, we're not talking about using the wrong language in a tweet from 10 years ago. We're talking about some fundamental failure to honor the expectations that we have of you.
Well, Grant, I can see what your book can do is help us re-engineer this honor to get it back into our society. And it's easy to see this was happening in every community, our country would be healthier, stronger, and more productive. And that's what honor does. When a country is full of honorable people, then you will have a productive country. Is that the way you see it, as far as from the
exactly
as a whole?
Yeah, that's very well said. In fact, I wish we'd asked you to write the intro to the book. Maybe if we do we republish, we'll do that. That was extremely well said.
Well, I can see how important this book is. I hope my listeners out there, everybody, go look up this book, talk about it, because this is something that our society needs, and it's what we need to be talking about. So good luck on your book, Grant, and thank you for coming on Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics.
It was my honor, Doc. Thanks a million for having me.
Now, do you know more about honor and the new honor code? Well, go get Dr. Grant McKraken's book. We got a link to it right here on the homepage at webtalkradio.net, Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. And again, next week, we'll be exploring a whole new area. So come back and listen to our new show. And don't forget, go back and listen to our archives if you've missed any shows, because you'll hear things here on Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics that you won't hear anywhere else. And we are becoming the home of the anti-socialist alliance. And because we have got to come together. We can't keep separating ourselves and breaking apart and let the socialist and the Marxist, the cultural Marxist, take over. So join us next week for another show of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. See you then.
Thanks for joining us today, and remember to listen again next week for another edition of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. You can order Ed's new book, Bedrock Truths, by clicking on the book cover right in front of you on the screen, or visit DocHolliday.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.